Hello friends, divine greetings of today to all of you. So I would like to extend warm greetings of Merry Christmas to all of you. Merry Christmas. And this is such an auspicious day, and on this day the Christmas carols are being sung across all the cathedrals and churches worldwide, thus actually celebrating positivity and divinity in its true spirit. So on this pious day, I could not stop myself in sharing the real essence of celebrating Christmas, as I found this write-up so interesting, and I would like to share its essence with you. Wish you a Merry Christmas, dear guys. Let us learn how to make our celebration of Christmas a real commemoration of the holy life of Christ, to make it a spiritual and uplifting experience. I saw a shotgun adorning a Christmas tree, and I remarked to the owner, "Madam, that shotgun for a present is basically an insult to the Jesus Christ within man. Thou shalt not kill. A gun means death, murder, revenge, brother fighting brother. For that reason, it is out of place in the celebration of the birthday of the Prince of Peace, who basically propagated brotherhood." The lady took the gun away and placed a child's Bible instead. Such a beautiful replacement. We must remember that on the Christmas day, we should exchange not only the useful gifts, but the God-reminding gifts. Christmas should be so used that it may materially, mentally, and spiritually give us at least a new impetus to start in the Christ path of truth with the beginning of the new year. With the coming of Christmas, do not let your consciousness sink into the well of turkey dinners, exchange of gifts, dances, festivities, and cocktail parties. A well of material thoughts is not a fit place in which to celebrate Christ's birthday. Instead, take your consciousness from the pitfalls of material festivities and enter the secret door of silence with closed eyes, to behold the vast altar of peace, spread eternally above, beneath, to the left and to the right, in front and behind, within and without. Meditate upon the following. My Christ peace is descending upon every living thing, upon every living star, upon every speck of matter and space. Celebrate Christmas upon the altar of vast inner silence and upon the sanctuary of every desire, every living thing in the world and the cosmos. Such a beautiful and thought-provoking article of divinity it is. Truly wonderful masterpiece. And I hope you would relish this particular essence of celebrating Christmas in its true spirit. Next, let's begin our economic session with the major news pieces of information. Russia and India plan to drop the use of US dollar, euro in the bilateral trade, according to the Russian diplomat. Russia and India plan to drop all use of the US dollar and the euro in the bilateral settlements and conduct all trade transactions in rupee and ruble, a senior Russian official has said. While it's a fundamental decision by both sides, it is necessary to address the imbalance in trade for a full-fledged transition to the national currencies, Mr. Zamir Kabulov, head of India division in Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, said. The officials are currently trying to address this issue. The Russian diplomat, who is also its special envoy for Afghanistan, told Russia's state-run news agency RIA Novosti. India currently buys from Russia 5 times more than it sells. That is, our imports from Russia are actually much higher in comparison to what we are exporting to that country. The move to address the trade imbalance would involve expansion of Indian exports to Russia based on Moscow's request for exports of certain items. That's what EE has learned. Our foreign minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, had discussed the issue to increase the Indian exports to Russia during his Moscow visit last month. India's trade with Russia is actually growing, led mainly by the energy sector, but also involves fertilizers, coal, coking coal, among other commodities. The bilateral trade has reached $27 billion this year, mainly due to the imports of large volumes of oil and fertilizers from Russia. India's ambassador to Moscow, Mr. Pavan Kumar, also suggested that the Russian businessmen look at India as the main source of their activities to make the trade between the two countries more balanced. This concerns not only pharma but also the agricultural products, ceramics and chemical products, he said. We are trying to conduct as many transactions in the national currencies as possible, for which the balanced trade is required, as one side accumulates more while the other accumulates less, and we should search for the solutions to this situation, Mr. Pavan Kapoor said at Russia-India Business Dialogue Forum on 23rd December 2022. He suggested several ways to balance the two-way trade between India and Russia, including the use of surplus rupees accumulated by the Russian banks in India for imports from India and investments in manufacturing backed by the production-linked incentive scheme, that is the PLI scheme. So if the two countries switch to the Rupee-Rouble settlement without addressing the trade imbalance, then Russian banks that accept the rupee payments from the Indian buyers and release the corresponding amount to the Russian sellers in ruble will see a huge pileup of the rupee even after buying back all the ruble Russian buyers pay for the Indian products and services. Meanwhile, the Indian exporters and investors are being encouraged to expand the trade and invest in Russia. So, while trading between the two countries, the concerned departments should take care of addressing the trade imbalance aspect. The 9th session of the India-Russia Working Group on Modernization and Industrial Cooperation of the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic, Scientific, Technological and Cultural Cooperation was held here on Friday, that is 23rd December 2022, to push the bilateral trade. Mr. Anurag Jain, the Secretary of the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, and Alexei Gruzdev, Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation, co-chaired the session. Russia has basically emerged as India's 5th largest trading partner with bilateral trade of $22.7 billion during April to September this year, that is 2022. The Reserve Bank of India had in July this year introduced a new mechanism for international trade settlements in rupees, aiming to promote the exports and facilitate the imports. The central bank has allowed HDFC Bank Limited and Canara Bank Limited to open a special Vostro accounts for trade in rupees with Russia. The Vostro accounts are held by a bank on behalf of another, often the foreign bank, and this forms a key part of the correspondent banking. The Russian energy major Gazprom has opened an account with the UCO Bank, while the VTB Bank and Sberbank have opened accounts with their own India-based branch offices. The commercial transactions to be settled in rupees will be done through these accounts, that is the Vostro accounts. Now, my dear friends, we have got the in-depth analysis through this insightful discussion wherein Russia and India plan to drop the use of US dollar and euro in the bilateral trade, and instead they plan to conduct the bilateral trade between them with the usage of their respective domestic currencies, that is rupee and ruble respectively. So if the two countries switch to Rupee-Rouble settlement without addressing the trade imbalance, then the Russian banks that accept the rupee payments from the Indian buyers and release the corresponding amount to the Russian sellers in ruble will see a huge pileup of the rupee. Even after buying back all the ruble, Russian buyers pay for the Indian products and services. So this is the main essence which we can get from this particular insightful discussion related to Russia-India bilateral trade. Now let's discuss the core aspects of the Union Budget 2023 in relation to bringing down the interest rates for the renewable power as demanded by the ASSOCHAM President Mr. Sumant Sinha. The ASSOCHAM President Mr. Sumant Sinha has called for bringing down the interest rates for the industry, especially for the domestic renewables sector, which is seeing high rates of 8 to 10% compared to 3 to 4% in the Western markets. On his expectations from the government for the domestic power and renewable energy sources in the upcoming budget, Mr. Sinha said that the interest rates should be brought down for the rate-sensitive sector. Finance Minister Dr. Rnwbl is scheduled to present the budget on February 1, as we have been discussing in all our sessions. Bring down the interest rates because ours is a very interest rate centric sector. It is high compared to what you pay in other parts of the world. In India, the rate is in the range of 8% to 9.5% for the industry, and specifically in power and renewable sector, it is about 8 to 10%. Mr. Sinha, who is also the chairman of Renew Power, said in an interview. In the Western world, the rates are just 3 to 4%. Mr. Sinha said, every 1 percentage point increase in the interest rate has an impact of about 15 paise on the tariff of power. So if borrowing is cheaper, the industry could provide cheaper power to the buyers, which will have a multiplier effect down the chain. Mr. Singh also suggested that the allocation for the production-linked incentives for the solar module manufacturing can be increased from 19,500 crore rupees in the budget for the financial year 2022-23. In our sector, what we would like to see happening is the announcement of the green hydrogen policy with some degree of subsidization for the manufacturing of hydrogen if we have to compete at the global level. In the United States, the generation cost of hydrogen is 3 to 4 US dollar, and their government gives subsidies up to the same level, so it's almost free, he said. In his Independence Day speech last year, Shri Narendra Modi ji, Prime Minister of India, announced the launch of the National Hydrogen Mission with a view to aiding the government in meeting its climate targets and making India a green hydrogen hub. The government can also come up with a PLI scheme for the electrolyzers in the budget, he suggested. The electrolyzers are required for the production of hydrogen, and the domestic availability of this equipment will boost India's plan to become a global hub of hydrogen manufacturing. Mr. Sinha also called for the PLI scheme for setting up of the wind energy capacities. Why don't we have a PLI for wind as well? It will bring down the cost of wind also. Wind and solar are both renewable energy. I have suggested this to the government, he said, adding that this will actually help bring down the cost of wind capacities, which is around 6 to 7 crore rupees per megawatt at present. So again, this in-depth analytical discussion on account of bringing down the interest rates for the renewable power in the Indian economy as suggested for the Union Budget of 2023 as per the demand of ASSOCHAM President Mr. Sumant Sinha is very, very insightful, and he has articulated his views in a very beautiful way. So his main message is basically to bring down the interest rates, because ours is a very interest rate centric sector. It is high compared to what you pay in other parts of the world. In India, the rate is in the range of 8% to 9.5% for the industry, and specifically in the power and renewable sector, it is 8 to 10%. Mr. Sumant Sinha, who is also the chairman of Renew Power, said in an interview. And if we draw the comparative analysis with the Western world, there the rates are in the range of 3 to 4%. Now, my dear friends, let's discuss the basic aspects of the electric vehicles. As the banks hesitate to finance, the electric vehicles get a lease of life. The fleet operators like taxi and logistics companies are increasingly taking the leasing route to deploy the electric vehicles instead of purchasing them, as many top banks continue to show the reluctance to finance electric vehicles. Mahindra Finance and Oryx Leasing, which are into EV leasing, expect the business to grow at a fast pace in the next 2 to 3 years from the current low base. Others like Tata Capital, Sumitomo, Mitsui Finance and Leasing, ALD Lease Plan and Revfin are expanding their electric vehicles leasing business targeting fleet operators. Leasing of vehicles allows the fleet operators to be asset light and channel the capital to other parts of their business instead of spending funds on acquiring the vehicles. Often they get an option to also buy the vehicles after the lease period. So with electric vehicles financing still not easily available, the leasing and subscription model sees a large offtake among the fleet operators, said Mr. Mohammed Turra, the Senior Vice President, Leasing Business at Mahindra Finance. So, Leasing will help increase the EV penetration significantly in the short term. Secondly, leasing offers a hoard of incentives to the customers, including insurance, maintenance, and roadside assistance and flexibility to upgrade. Thirdly, number of startups, mobility solution providers, and financiers have come up with the customized leasing options with zero down payment. And fourthly, for the electrical vehicles where the upfront cost to own a vehicle is high and banks are reluctant to give loans as it is a new segment, the customers are increasingly preferring usership through leasing over ownership. Leasing provides better cash flow for the fleet operators. There is also no down payment with an option to buy back in 3 to 4 years at 20% buyback value, he added. The math works for the fleet operators to adopt electric vehicles as the arbitrage between the OPEX and CAPEX helps mitigate the risk, said Mr. Sandeep Gambhir, Managing Director at Oryx Leasing. Oryx has leased 300 cars this year compared with 50 last year. Because of the low base, the next couple of years will see 100% growth, Mr. Gambhir said. India's taxi fleet market is actually seeing good traction for the EVs, and automakers such as Tata Motors are firming up the plans to tap into this demand. Under a tie-up with the Blue Smart Mobility, the Tata Motors plans to supply the electric vehicles for the ride-sharing companies all electric fleet in the National Capital Region, that is NCR. Blue Smart, which has a full electric fleet of 3,000 cars, hopes to expand the number to 25,000 over the next 1 year. We offer a 6-month moratorium to the fleet operators on lease payments. As the operator scales up this business, the EMIs also increase. This way, the burden on the operator is actually lesser in the initial period, said Blue Smart co-founder Mr. Anmol Jaggi. Most fleet operators want to be asset light, and the leasing model works well for them as asset maintenance is not their responsibility, said Mr. Samir Agarwal, founder of RevFin Services, a digital lending platform. RevFin has tied up with Zingo EV Mobility to finance and lease more than 25 electric three-wheelers and 200 electric two-wheelers in the next 3 months in the areas around Delhi and Bangalore. So this in-depth analytical discussion is again very insightful as far as the leasing of the electric vehicles is concerned, thereby helping the banks to finance in this particular aspect. So the leasing of vehicles allows the fleet operators to be asset light and channel the capital to other parts of their business instead of spending the funds on acquiring the vehicles. Often they get an option to also buy the vehicles after the lease period. This is the main essence of our overall discussion in this particular aspect. Next, my dear friends, we will like to discuss India's demographic dividend is actually for real, but it needs to be discounted heavily. We are going to have an in-depth analytical discussion in this particular aspect in tomorrow's session, but today we are going to have a brief overview or the brief background for this particular topic. The quality of workers. Quality is actually difficult to measure. One marker commonly used to measure quality is education. Here, China has a distinct advantage. 15% of the Chinese population has a college degree, while in India, that number is just 11%. So given the gap in their LFP rates, the numbers with the college degrees that will join the labor force in the two countries would probably not be much different. Now, my dear friends, let's discuss some COVID news. In Chinese economy, the COVID-19 variant, the new variant that is BF.7 Omicron virus is actually spreading at a very fast pace, as a result of which the ICU's beds are falling short. Also, the dead bodies which are being brought to the cremation grounds, they are also being brought in huge piles because of the disgrace and a lot of pain and agony spread due to this virus. So this virus is very heavily damaging the overall health sector for the Chinese economy. And in other parts of the world as well, the situation is actually not so favorable. The people are experiencing a lot of discomfort. Many countries are thinking to impose the lockdown once again to actually prevent the spread of this virus at a large scale. So this is a very important proactive measure. And as far as India is concerned, here as well we have basically planned to actually prohibit the entrance of the COVID patients into our country directly. Those people who are getting tested positive, especially those who are returning from China, those international passengers are being asked to quarantine themselves for a certain period until they get COVID negative. And a lot of states had the discussions with the health minister, Mr. Mansukh Maldavia, and some states are also thinking to impose the lockdown if the situation doesn't improve globally. So that's all for the day, dear guys, and I hope that you have been benefited immensely with this in-depth analytical discussion as far as the economic aspects are concerned. And I really hope to meet you guys again with some research work done on your part as well regarding the key economic matters for our economy as well as for the global economy as a whole, so that you find this session the two-way oriented, even though it's the virtual session, but we would be able to exchange our ideas in a much better manner. You would be able to absorb a lot of content if you have done the research work on your part as well. So that's all, dear guys, and I really wish all of you take an excellent care of yourselves until we meet next. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.